Yeah, we can. Oh, yep, the microphone's on. That's the key to start. That's the key to start. Okay, yeah, okay, I'll start off then. So welcome everyone. Understand it's Friday. Thank you for choosing our session. I'm sure there were many other good sessions on as well. So my name's Travis Sansom.
And I'm Dipanjan Ghosh.
Yeah, we both work for Microsoft. I work as what we call a technical specialist. And I'm across something like 300 accounts. And I have pre-sales, architectural, technical discussions. I don't do troubleshooting though. I'm not meant to. Sometimes I get roped into it though.
Right, and that's when they call us. So
yes.
I'm a PFE or Premier Field Engineer as well / consultant. So I do a lot of development, coding, do a lot of stuff in Azure, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, migration and so on and so forth. And I also kind of play in my pastime with bots. So that's kind of where I'm landing up with these guys. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. So he's got the cool, he's on Modern Apps, which is kind of, it's the cool team, I reckon.
The name is cool.
The name's cool, right? What is a modern app? But okay, we're going to get started. So the idea for this session, it's a session on bots. So if you weren't expecting bots, might be the time to leave the room. So this is a bot session, and what we're going to be doing is it's not really going to be a level 100 bot. We are going to start off and kind of have a little bit of a walkthrough on just an initial creation of a bot, but that's going to be it in terms of the 100, and we're going to be more looking on how do you make a bot successful. So the tips to when you've actually started creating the bot, what are the things we're seeing across customers in terms of them being successful. And that's the idea. So first we're gonna start off with a video because videos are cool. If you've seen this one at the conference already, apologies, but it's still entertaining for those who haven't. It's called the Conversation as a Platform video, and here we go. If it wants to start. Yeah,
Cortana, I want to dress like this. Can you help me find it? I like this one. Yes, please. Can I get it in a size 6? Cool. Cortana, please give them my payment and shipping info.
Cool, so that's what we call the Conversation as a Platform video. Really, it speaks to a vision which is probably a year away from now, where we have all these bots that people are developing, and Cortana kind of becomes an intermediary to those bots and connecting them all together. So you can really have that fluid conversation, but it's about building the blocks now.
And by the way, the Cortana, there's a thing called skills, which has come up already, but it's kind of in a preview and we can't all get into it. So if you have a really good business case, there is a site where you can go and talk to it and submit your business case, and you might get through to this kind of internal previews where you can actually start thinking about Cortana and how can incorporate that to multiple bots and all that stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
But it's going to be an exciting future. So first we're going to switch over and we're going to do a little bit of a demo. Now, these ones are pre-recorded, but they should get the message across. Actually no, before playing it, I'll say, so who's created a bot already? Good, a few people, okay. And then who's created a bot with the bot framework? Who's created a bot with the bot services? One, two, okay. It's a couple of months old, so. Okay, we're going to look at the bot services here, and I'll explain the difference between them when we go through. So for developing bots on the front end, you'll notice that when we go to the portal and you go new, for now, what you want to instantiate is something we call the bot services. When you go ahead and search for it, you'll also notice that when it comes out, that it's actually got bot services preview, and that's because the bot service itself has only been out for sort of a couple of months. The framework itself has been out for basically a year now. This is just the PaaS service. You notice that the bot service, what it is here, is it's actually a one-stop shop management studio-like experience for developing bots inside of Azure. And that's how it's been set up. You'll notice when you go create some key things there, so you're going to go ahead and create your bot service ID. You're also going to point it to a resource group. Think about that very carefully. And then the nice thing is that you can choose its location. And just to answer that golden question that everyone asks, yes, it's available in both Australian East and Australian Southeast. So you can have it in Australian data centers. So that's one. Once you've done all that, you'll go ahead and create it. That'll go ahead, validate it, and provision it for you. And you'll have this next experience coming up. This one. So once you come across to the Management Studio, the first thing for bots you need to know is that you'll need to create a Microsoft App ID. If you haven't played with apps before, you have to do this. When you create that App ID, what it's going to do is it's actually going to take you through to your Azure Active Directory and get you to actually provision that app and then get what we call an App ID and the app's secret, which you're going to have to supply back to the bot framework. To skip that. Here, this is where, so I've got quite a few applications, but here we go ahead and we register that application that we had before. And then once we create that application, it's simply going to pop up with the application's ID, and also what it's going to do is it's going to have the application secrets right there, where you'll have to generate that new password. You notice what I'm doing? I'm also just copy and pasting it into the previous screen before as well. Generating that new password, and then we'll pipe that across. You'll notice I copy it there because it's only displayed one time. So I had some nice experiences where people go, where did my app secret go? We told you where it went. But that's that, and then you'll copy and paste that across. Now next, the part here, you'll notice that for bot framework and bots today, we support writing them in two languages. One is either C# or Node.js. So whichever camp you're in, you can choose whatever you want. If you want something like Python, add it to the suggestion center. Now, once you've chosen that, you've actually got 5 templates to start off from today. These are ready-built templates for you to start your bot that you're developing instead of you having to start it from scratch. And there's a basic one, there's a form one which collects input, there's a proactive one, there's a language understanding one, and then there's a question and answer. So we're going to be going through some of these today. The language understanding uses a framework we call LUIS, if you haven't heard about it already at the conference, which Dipanjan will go through later. And question and answer is a really nice one for creating kind of Q&A on top of everyday questions for bots. Now, once you go ahead and choose your one, what's going to happen is that's going to go ahead and it's going to do a couple of things, but it's going to spin it up for you. And then what's going to happen is you will land with this screen over here. This screen is the actual studio experience for bots. One thing you'll notice about the studio experience, it's kind of simple how it's divided up the top there. One is develop, one is the channels that you deploy out to, and you can see the myriad of channels that we support pushing the bot out to. The other one is settings, so your icon, awfully important. And then publishing it, and that's publishing it to the bot directory. You'll notice if we step through the code, this is actually the .NET example. It's the .NET and it's the form example. You'll notice on the right-hand side, you have a nice chat interface to actually interface with your bot and test it, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. So I've gone hi, I've gone hello, and it's gone hi, what is your name? I've gone Travis, and it's asked me a question of please select your favorite card type. I've gone convertible. And then it's asked me for my favorite color, and I've gone white. And then it prompts me to say, is that correct? and then I say yes. So that's an example there of form input, but done with a bot. Now, if we step through the code, this code is actually divided for the .NET one into three main areas. One is the run.csx that I'm on at the moment. And you'll notice in the run.csx what we're doing is we're actually picking up the ping that is sent to the bot. And that's actually the message that it's sent to the bot. And you notice I look at the activity and I actually bring out the activity type and say, that ping that was sent to the bot, what was the user trying to tell the bot? And there's a couple of messages that the person can tell the bot. One is something like a conversation update. So say a new person enters the conversation, the bot needs to know about that. So that's one ping that you can send to the bot. Another ping might be that the conversation has ended. So maybe you aborted the conversation. That's another one. The simple one that we all think about, though, is that the bot has been sent a message. And that's the one that you'll see right here, the loops through. For this .NET example, what happens is that it instantiates a class called main dialog. And if I step through, that's the class, but it starts off this message, async received, and it builds what we call a form dialog, which is what you saw it step through before. Now, form dialog looks like this. You're going to get talked to them about in a soon. This is what a form dialog looks like in .NET. You'll notice that it's been tagged with the prompts that you saw inside the chat conversation before. So you'll see there, hi, what is your name, was the first one we got. The second one was, please select your favorite. And then the last one there is some methods to actually pipe through those color options, which you see up the top there. And then that's the bot all deployed there. Now, the last thing you want to think about is the management studio here is a really, really good experience. But if you're like me, I like to use my things on my own machine. Like I like to use things like Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code instead. And the way you need to hook them up is by hooking up continuous integration. So if we go across to here, one of the ones in the tabs you'll notice is settings across here. When you go down to settings in continuous integration, you'll see the steps you need to take. So one thing you need to do is you need to download the source code. You need to put that source code into your favorite repository. Once it's put into the repository, you click that magic setup integration source, and then what you'll notice is when you go through, you set up the deployment, and then that comes through and it'll prompt you with all of your various options. So for today, for setting up the bot, in terms of doing that continuous integration, you've got OneDrive, local Git repository, GitHub, Bitbucket, Dropbox, or even an external repository. Once you've done that, you can use Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code. Once you push through syncs and commits through to the repository, that'll automatically flow through to the bot and update the bot, and you no longer have to use the web experience. Really up to you which one you want to use, though. Now, that was the kind of ultra quick demo of just walking through and building a bot. We're now actually going to swap to the actual how can we do it better. So if we, the clicker, but we need to swap the screen.
Oh, yep, so it's, I think it's...
It was 8. It's 8. It looks like a 0 on the thing. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to swap across to how can we do it better. So there are a couple of things there that you would have seen. We like to think the goals for this session, we're going to have 5 main objectives. The first one for when we write a bot successfully is aim for readability and efficiency when coding. Emphasis on the first one, especially if you're writing a Node.js app, more if you're writing a .NET one as well. Code bloat is definitely a thing where you have lots of code. It's something we want to minimize at the end of the day. So we'll go through some techniques on how to do that, and efficiency there as well. The other one that we want you to remember is aim for your bot to be enterprise ready. If we think of most bots today, where they're targeted at is the consumer market today. But what we're seeing is a lot of the strategies for the consumer market are the same ones that you're seeing for the enterprise market, without spoiling some of the stories that we're going to tell. The next one is aim for your bot to be like a human. No one likes to interact with a bot which sounds like a bot, so it needs to sound like a human. The more human it is, the more better. And we'll talk about change impact a bit later as well. The other one is aim for your bot to be perceived as smart. So this idea that it should have some level of intelligence. So we're going to show some demos later. I know Dipanjar's got one, but I had one where I had a customer, and it was a paint company customer, and I basically showed them how a bot could take a photo that you gave in. We threw it our cognitive APIs. It tells you what the photo is of, so it tells you it's a bathroom, and it picks out the dominant color. And it actually suggests you a paint sample based off that color. So that's that level of smarts that the bot's doing that's above what all of that. The last part, which is the ironic part, is remember all the non-coding parts. So we have some really nice stories of when you go to publish it out to services, which people don't think about at the early stage, and it does take a couple of days in some services, and we'll walk through that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're going to start with that aim for readability and efficiency when coding, and the way we're going to do this is we're actually going to split it. So Dipanjan's going to do the .NET side, I'm going to do the Node.js side.
Yep.
That's how we're going to
Sure.
start. So we're going to start with the .NET
Yep.
side.
As we go with the theme, it's all about pointers around how to make it better, right? So we would do a lot of code, but always keep in mind that we are actually talking about how you can make it more sort of a human sort of touch in your bot, where you can chatting with it, right? So it's not a command prompt where you're just writing a bunch of commands and it's going and bringing some API data to you, right? It's more of an interaction that you are doing in a chat format where the window is really small. So you need to understand all those kind of things, right? So just taking the cue from him, I'll just switch on my stuff. I think it's 7.
Yeah.
All right, it's coming there. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Actually, let's go back to the 8.1. Just give me the clicker. Cool.
Yeah.
Before I get into the code, I just wanted to quickly talk about this. First of all, in terms of formatting, if you're using Visual Studio Code for Node.js and stuff like that, or Visual Studio, I think you are kind of sorted because Visual Studio is an amazing IDE, right? It's one of the best. So you can do all sorts of formatting there. Tabbing is all automated. Class structures comes out well and all that stuff. So it's not really about the structure which you would probably do in a notepad or some kind of those kind of scenarios. But I think the more that you really need to worry about is how you can build the bot better, right? So think of those things. So I've kind of touched upon dialogue and form flow, one of the stuff that he also talked about. I'm just going to elaborate a bit on those. And most cases, you are not going to use one or the other. In most cases, you would be doing a mishmash of both. If you guys have played much with the Ignite bot, how many of you actually downloaded the Ignite bot and used it? All right, fair few. Awesome. Cool. So if you actually look at the Ignite bot, we have done a lot of these things together. So there are a lot of hands-off from, say, a dialogue back to the form flow, and then form flow back to the dialogue, and then bunch of cognitive APIs behind the scenes. So a lot of times, if it's a complex bot, you would going to use a lot of that together. But let's actually go back and start looking at a few of the simple ones. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly show you is around dialogue chaining. So, and why we use dialogues is very, very simple, because we want to guide the users to a certain sort of close-ended scenarios, right? You don't want to, you have to guide the users because the users probably don't know what they need to ask, right? So those kind of things, in those kind of scenarios, handholding is really, really important, where you guide them through a right path. The example that he showed about, hey, what car do you want, and the bunch of options and so on and so forth, right? So if I'm actually running this. So by the way, when you are into a .NET framework, I see that bunch of you, or 3 or 4 of you actually work with .NET framework. Setting up is really easy, but sometimes it's a bit obscure in the website if you go and start reading the document. It's actually a package that you download and you set it up in your project templates, and that's practically it. And then when you go back and let's say Visual Studio, just pick any one, do a right click, new project. And then you do Windows or web, I guess. Yep. So you would see bot framework application type shows up. End of the day, it's just a API app or a web app. It's just a glorified API app or web app. It just in the controller, it just knows how to respond back as a conversation rather than just throwing in some data. That's practically it. When we are hosting it back to Azure Web App, you would see that it actually gets hosted as a API app there. That's all. So it's easy to do those kind of things like load testing and stuff like that on the application. All right, so let's go and look at it. And the other thing that is kind of a friendly tool when you're developing is something called Bot Framework Emulator. Now, this is really cool because you can, when you're building it, you probably are not directly going to publish it in a channel. You're doing it on your IIS Explorer and stuff like that. On those kind of cases, you would need something like this to play with, right?
I was going to say, the only tip for Bot Framework Channel and Emulator is you'll notice up the top that it's listening on localhost 1990 for him. So he's actually set up his web server so that it comes out on 1990.
Yep.
That's a nice little one that if you do it wrong, it complains.
Yeah. So yeah, when you play it, of course, it will give you a local port. Just point to that port and you're ready to go. So in this case, if you see, it's a very, very simple but it kind of gives you a lot of understanding to it. So what I'm doing is basically counting. It's doing an echo, but it's also counting the clicker. So if I'm doing something like hello again, it keeps counting the stuff. But in one point in time, I want to reset, right? So in that case, I would just say reset. And it comes as a dialog. So dialog, essentially, how it does it goes through a number of prompts, and you can chain your dialogue. So if you go back to, if I go back to one of my code, oops, I'm looking at the wrong one. Yep. Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to understand this, but if you are into scripting as well, it's pretty jQuery way of writing code. So, so you're chaining bunch of prompts, and then depending on what you answer, it can go through different paths. And in terms of prompts, we have different sorts of prompts where you can do a choice, you can do a normal prompt, you can do a load of different options in a prompt itself, and then you can set them up to the different paths depending on your flow. So you say, okay, all right, so go back, I say yes, it resets. So it's kind of a hand-holding. And then, of course, if you are not sure about things, what you do is you type help, and it does that, it resets it. Now, this is something called dialogue, but then there are also things like forms that you need to fill up. Remember we had a party yesterday night, right? Spark at the Dark or something like that. And we had to manually fill up a form and such and things like that. Or if we are talking about things like pizzas and sandwiches, it's practically a form that you fill up when you go online. Say Domino's, you go online and you put bunch of stuff around toppings and so on and so forth. So bots, awesome in terms of filling out forms and stuff like that, where you can guide the users to go in different paths and fill forms. And again, inside the framework itself, we provide that sort of a setup to do it. So if I actually go back and look into this particular one, I'll just close this. And I probably do, yep. And here, if you look at sandwich.cs, you would see that there is a different way of, there is a way of writing the code. And I'm practically doing a bunch of array, a bunch of enums and all that stuff, and I'm setting it up. And the framework itself takes care of the form itself. And it also does a lot of things around handling the error, and if you try to go off the path, it will try to bring it back. So you see, with these kind of things, we automatically start making the bot smarter. And I haven't used any cognitive so far, right? So if I quickly run this, and I'm pretty close to finishing it. And it randomly would give me a port. 3977. So yeah, I'm just going to show you the emulator as well. So that's pretty easy. And you need to add /API/messages. So that's how it kind of knows where to hit. And you do enter. Right, so, and there you go. So if you now try something like sandwich. All right, and it starts now throwing me all the options that I have. And if I show you this, you would see that it actually throws me options exactly the way I've set up my form framework. And then I say, okay, I'll take this. And so if you see the length, and then it talks about the bread. So it goes pretty well. And some of the things are, the other thing that I wanted to talk about is some of the things are actually inbuilt in it. So so you've got this bunch of options, right? Now if I do 11, so it actually tells you all this, and I haven't really done anything or hand-coded this. So this is actually done by the form framework itself, which is awesome. And anyway, let's keep going. All right, let's say 9. So I say yes. Yeah. So these are the way it does it, and as you can see, I have not yet done any sort of cognitive and all those kind of stuff. So not always that you really need smarts. You probably need it for a bit more open-ended bots. But for simple stuff, you can start right here. It obviously would be a bit cheaper than the cognitive ones, though cognitive ones are not that expensive. Now the last one that I want to talk about in terms of it was 7, right?
8.
8. Yeah, keep forgetting it. All right. The last one I want to really talk about is as we code with .NET and bot framework and stuff like that. Application Insights is your friend. So if you really want to do things around cognitive and all those kind of things, think of those kind of scenarios, because you can always do the normal debugging stuff around and then logging it to certain storage and so on and so forth. But this gives you a really rich analytics and dashboards that you can get. Look, this is not a dev session, but Application Insights is your friend. And I was doing sandwich order, and it was 7, right? Yep. And I actually had Apps Insight right here, and it was sniffing through all my stuff going on. And if I actually, so I refreshed it. Yeah, so it starts showing you all the dashboards and what's going on, and what are the requests coming in, and so on and so forth, which is awesome. And you can dig deeper. You can do a lot of things. You can actually do something called live streaming, where you can live stream all your requests going on at the same time. For things like bot, which probably would be heavily used and with a lot of people all across, this is something you would absolutely want going on with your application. Just a quick one. This is something that I just added a NuGet to my project. It's pretty non-intrusive, really no need to do much. But if you really want to customize it or sort of channel your debugging or auditing to this, you can do that too. So there are a lot of things you can do in this. All right, so let's move forward. So that was the demo.
We need to switch.
All right, yeah.
8.
8.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the demo. You've already done the demo. You're already there.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Now we're going to switch over to Node.js. Important ones there are use your classes. For Node.js, one of the tips that I learned very fast is if you haven't used Visual Studio Code already, you should be using it. The startup time of Visual Studio Code versus the startup time for Visual Studio is, let's not even go there. It was also first to get Mac support, right? So there's all that good stuff. I was going to say the debugger as well. You'll notice online if you go to the documents, it's kind of blurry in terms of how do you debug a bot. The debugger out of Visual Studio Code works out of the box. So you just go play, it all works. You'll see some funky things of write a command line bot and then debug it through command. You don't need to do all of that. So that's the first tip for Node.js. The second tip is this one. Now, for Node.js, the difference that you're going to see in the demo is actually that the dialogues that you saw before is basically, so when you ping a bot, for this one that I'm going to show you this one, so I've got an intent there, and basically when you give it a statement, I'm trying to detect if you're trying to teach it about a job title. And then when I'm teaching about a job title, I actually run through a series of segments inside the conversation. And that's the conversation you can see right there. I'm going to walk you through it. That's in Node.js how I've done that. I've actually exported the functions out to a separate module, and I'm then hooking into the functions, which you'll see in a second. So instead of writing them all there and having all of that code, it's neatly done. When you have this, you should be thinking in your head, if I was to explain the bot to you what it does, from just seeing this, I can explain pretty well what it does. That's that one. The other one as well is that we're going to look at is that for this one, for the statements that you send back to the user, one of the key things when you start writing the bot, the thing you'll do at first is you'll probably go, with session.end dialog, you'll notice that I put a string in after. That string is actually what I'm sending back to the user. Naturally, you'll probably type, what's the statement? Best practice is to actually take that statement out, put it into a configuration file, which is the one on the right, and when you're referring to it, refer to it by its ID. So that means if you want to use it anywhere else, you can use it anywhere else, make the change on the config file, it goes everywhere. So that's one thing, and I'll show you that. I'll show you some examples where I've done that and I haven't done that, and we can kind of be like, Travis, you should have done that. So we're going to switch over to the demo now, and you'll see that bot that we had just there. I am on number 6. Okay, so this is the bot. I'll explain what the bot is first. So we have a lovely thing inside Microsoft. If you've talked to any Microsoft representative and we kind of go to you, do you know who looks after you from an account perspective? And then your gut response is usually, if you're a manager level, you're like, yeah, I speak to this person all the time. If you're a developer, it's like, I don't know, I just want help. So I made this bot, and the idea was, can we teach the bot about our employees, what workloads they're associated to, and what customers they're associated to? And that was the idea of the bot. And then ask it those questions as well. So for me, this is my Node.js one. Like I said before, you'll notice there's a lot of stuff at the top. For Node.js, I'm using something called Restify, if you haven't heard of it. That's to actually do my REST calls to other APIs. You'll also notice that all I'm doing there is starting up, Restify is my web server. So Restify is the framework that I've chosen to actually use my web server. You can use Express if you want to use Express for Node.js apps as well. And then you notice if I walk through, there's some constants there, there's some pointers out to Lewis. But what I've done here is I've actually set it for a localization as well. So I've said English there, and that's how it knows how to point out to the config file. But if I walk down here, what I want to show you is there's this way of writing. So I've got that intent stop matches, and here you'll notice this intent dot matches when you ask for people or a person. So when you say a question of who is the TSP for bots who works on Woolworths, it should come back with my name. That's the question that it routes through to. Now for that question, this is the dialogue that it runs through. So it first starts off and it tries to recognize the employee if you mentioned it. So did you actually mention Travis Sansom? If you didn't, there's also another use case of if the bot didn't recognize Travis Sansom as an employee name already, right? So it might not detect it, and that's when you need to build that in. That's one way of writing a dialogue that we just saw there, so a series of functions. Now, like I said before, you can take those functions and you can put them in another file. That's how you ask for a person or people. If I scroll down to the bottom to the teaching code, you'll see that in the teaching code, it's all the way down the bottom. This is the teaching code. Hands up which one looks nicer. I think we can all say the teaching code looks nicer. This is the teaching code. So teaching about a job, like before. So we've matched to that job, and then what are we doing? So we're checking if the job is recognized. So were we actually able to pick up a job from the user? So have we kind of seen it before is what the bot's saying. Next, it'll say, check if that job already exists in its memory. If it doesn't, it goes through and it checks if you mentioned the full name for the job or the nickname for the job. So we have TSP as the acronym, but I can do the full name is Technical Solution Professional, changes on a daily basis. The next thing is we then ask for the one that wasn't mentioned. We then receive the one that wasn't mentioned. We also ask for the role category for the job as well. And then lastly, we commit that role to memory. If I was to show you where all the kind of semi-ugly code is, it's all wrapped in this employee file there. So you'll see that check if employee was recognized. Actually, that was job, sorry. That was this one. So you see that's the teach employee. And if you go here, you'll see the check if employee was recognized, and then that's all the code sitting right there. So that's tip number one. Move them out to a separate file because it's a lot easier to read when the next developer comes along. We often don't do that, that and commenting. Now, the other one as well is, like I said before, separate out the statements to a config file that sits on the side. So you'll notice when I go through here, if I won't do the build one, you'll see this session.send. One thing I've done is I've put there, I already know about the bot. If I go down further as well, I won't do one with parameters, but you notice here, I've put this, thanks for making me smarter. Now, putting it there is nice, but I can tell you that thanks for making me smarter is something I use across all of the teach commands. So I've basically got that duplicated across all of my functions. What I should have done is I should have gone across to here. Inside my locale that I've set, the locale is pointing to English. And for English, I basically said, I've got a yay, got it right, fantastic, booyah, talk about personality. But there's the thanks for smartness, and you'll see it right there. So instead of putting, and that's the text you saw. So instead of putting the text, I take that one, take it across to the employee one where we were before, and just simply write that in. And that's how we change it. So that's how you should write your sessions.send. Often people don't, because you just get into a frantic and it's like, what do I do? But that's a secret. Localization, we'll talk about it in a bit. It's actually one of those secret weapon techniques that's not obvious at first, but super powerful. With that, I will, if you want to see what the bot actually looks like, because you're not convinced of how it works, I'll do this. Node.app.js. You know, Restify is listening now. If I go to the bot, ignore my start screen. Don't know what game's on there today. If I go here to the bot frame, if I go now, if I go Travis Sansom is an employee, it'll go gotcha, because I already know about me, because I've already taught it. If I go Martin Kirby is an employee, he's another person at Microsoft. It's asking me, was Martin Kirby the alias or the full name? Because that's what we saw before in the conversation. And I go, well, Martin Kirby was the full name. And then at this point it says, so what was their alias? So internally we have aliases. I can tell you his is M.A. Kirby. And I won't tell you how you form our emails, because otherwise you can email him a lot. The next one is I ask for the office location for an employee. And this is an interesting one, because you'll notice if it wants to see something that I recognize. If I type SID, it doesn't actually know about SID at this point, because it's not too knowledgeable. But what it's done, like Divanjan said, is it's got a set of options that it's looking for. And it's when it said, you didn't say one of my options, so go ahead and click it. And you just click it.
Yeah, which is cool.
Which is good.
Yeah.
And then it comes through. Now, there's a little bit extra stuff there. That's the tips for Node.js. If you notice for the debugger as well, you just go into there and hit play and you're all good, and then you set your breakpoints. And that's how you can debug it. Let's switch back across and we're going to dive into the next section. Section 8. 8. Okay.
All right, cool. So what we did first is we talked a bit around tooling, right? So when you start building your bot, either you would be doing a bot services or framework or Node.js. So just quick tips on how to do a few things around there. Now, the next thing that we are going to talk about is now that more and more customers are really getting excited about bots and stuff like that and starting, taking the baby steps towards bots. There are a few things to talk about in terms of making it enterprise ready. Now, there are a lot of things that you would get, and some of the things like diagnostics and apps inside and all that stuff is absolutely good. You need that to kind of monitor how your application is performing. But there are a few other things, right? Because when you think of Sky for Business and stuff like that, where you're having a conversation with your peers day-to-day basis, but you also need to have those conversations for looking it up later on. So you would see in your Outlook, you have a bunch of conversation histories where, hey, I had a nice chat with my colleague then, and he sent me some links. I really want to know what that was. So you go through the conversation history, and you go and do that. For a lot of auditing and all those kind of stuff, you still need those kind of scenarios, right? In an enterprise scenario. So that would be our tip number one. Logging. So when we do things like cognitive, where you have LUIS, which talks about the intent from synthesis, it does a synthesis of your natural language and talks and gives you an intent of, hey, this guy blabbered a lot of slangs, but this is probably what he was actually meaning. And then you have Q&A Maker, where it would actually log what all questions were hit to it. But then these are different factors in the whole environment of bot, right? So they can only give you the logs of things that actually hit it. But you want your conversation to come all together, where you really need to see what all went on. And then you can do a whole lot of stuff around passing the conversation to somebody else, let somebody else or a human being to actually then hijack that conversation and carry it on if you really need to. So there are a lot of fun stuff that you can do.
Yep.
All right. So if I get back to my stuff, which is number 7, I think.
So whilst he's doing that, the one tip to know as well is when you go into LUIS, you'll notice that LUIS remembers everything people type. Emphasis on everything people type. So if they type the same phrase over and over again, it basically stores all of them. And LUIS doesn't have a great search engine, so you can imagine the experience gets quite frustrating, especially when I've had situations where I've shown a bot to somebody and they've gone, it didn't work. And they're like, did you see what I said into the bot? And I'm like, well, no, I didn't, because I didn't put logging into the bot. Rookie mistake.
Yeah. The other thing I quickly mentioned was that, for logging nowadays, there are a lot of options, right?
Yeah.
And because conversation is not really structured with columns and stuff, it's better to do it in non-SQL ones like table storage or DocumentDB. Because it comes as a JSON. Nowadays, it's pretty easy to display your JSON in different ways. It's absolutely right. And table storage is obviously a bit less expensive than any other SQL counterparts, right? So think on those lines. I would be showing a demo, a quick demo to throw it to a table storage. And the other one that I would want to talk about is not all conversation needs to be for everyone. It's not. Sometimes enterprise bots are not really public bots. It's internal facing. In all those kind of cases, and for an example, Ignite bot is one of the good examples where if you were trying to search for my sessions, it would ask you to log in, right? Because not everyone wants to see what you're interested in. So personalized data is one option, and obviously if you're talking to a bank and stuff and asking for your bank balance, you would want to log in whatever multi-factor authentication you want. So authorization authentication is something that you can also do, and be it Node.js, be it Visual Studio, you can practically use C#, right? You can practically use all the goodness that you already have, right? Okay, let's.
So you should tell them about. The other thing is with the authentication, do it early. Because if you ask us with the Ignite bot, what was probably the second topic of discussion? It was authentication, because we knew it was going to be the difficult part. So do it early. Don't leave it as a last minute thing.
That's right. So I'll quickly talk a bit around the. It's a quick demo. I'll get to. Hold on. Where is my? Yep. Okay, let's get to the bot first. So this is where I'm going to quickly show you how you can actually log in. Now there are in GitHub. By the way, most of the demos are open source. You can go to GitHub and get one. For Ignite bot, what we did was just did a did a OAuth authentication with the backend system, which is CRM. In this case, I'm just going to show you a demo of a NuGet package that it's already there available in GitHub. Just download and start playing with it. So my authentication is with Azure Ready, the Microsoft Azure Ready. It's much easier to do that way. So if I run this, and if I go back up to my, yep, it's in the same place, which is good. And if I do something like a log on, now in this case I just made a simple one of log on, and then it's triggering the code. In your case, it can be anything like my sessions, and it would practically go through the LUIS, come back to your code, and you can run the same code to see if it's authenticated or not. Very, very simple. Now, if you do that, just click on this. It would ideally take you to, in this case, it's taking me to Edge. But if you see the URL, because I'm already signed in as a Microsoft employee, so Azure Ready automatically knows this, but it also challenges me. So it's like a multi-factor where it just says that, hey, okay, you're signed in already, but we still need to verify. So what you do is you put a number, and that's it. And it now becomes aware of who I am. Now, if you run any code or any APIs that you call behind the scenes, it would just start serving you the data that you need. So again, authentication authorization is something that you probably would look at once you get deeper into the bot experience, especially things like banks and stuff like that. Not so much for ordering pizzas, but.
Yeah, definitely think about the form factor of a device that this is going to, because you are going to have to do that redirect to an external web page. If you think once that's on a mobile, what kind of experience is that going to be like? Some users are used to it nowadays, but it's just something to be keeping in mind.
Yeah, the other one for the logging, it's a quick one. If you go to, so this is the application. As I say, it's basically a web app or API app. In the string, it's much like a connection string. In this case, I'm just logging to or connecting to a table storage. That's pretty easy. And I just run this. And the other thing good about Visual Studio right now is that if you actually look into this, there's something called Cloud Explorer which comes up nowadays. If you have Azure subscription, it automatically sniffs through all your Azure subscriptions. You can log in to it, and it can tell you what all is available, what not. You can go through your subscription, your storages, and you can get data from it. And that's practically how I'm going to show you how the conversation is getting loaded. So you see, it automatically knows about my internal Azure subscription, and it would load up all my stuff that's in there, which is really cool. So in this case, don't worry about the error because I don't have a home page, which is okay. 36712. And I'll walk myself to my storage accounts. There are something called Storage Explorer also if you want to really download it separately, but this works really well. This is the particular storage that I'm looking at. That's where I'm logging stuff. This is my tables, and this is my bot data. And you see that I've already logged some stuff here. And if I let's go back here, and if I say it's a new conversation, and I just start saying hello. Again, it's a normal echo bot. It's quite fun, right? I can keep doing this. Anyway, so and if you actually refresh this, yeah, you would start seeing that it increased. And the conversation actually loads as a bunch of bytes because it's bunch of conversation happened with images and stuff. You can easily just read it as a stream and then display it whichever way you want. And there are a lot of stuff you can do with this in how you want to display it and stuff. You can create an admin screen where you can actually go by users and conversations. You can do a lot of magic once you've stored in things like a table storage. All right, cool. Let's move forward. I think let's talk about the next tip.
Yeah.
Let's get there. Yep, go for it.
Oh, question.
Yep. Yep. yes, it is. It might not transfer between channels, but let's say that exactly what we did with IgniteBot, where if you're logging in Skype in your desktop and you're logged in, and then if you're trying to work with your phone Skype, it would practically take you through. So it's a bit channel specific. You can't transfer it through channels, but yeah, inside the channel you can easily. You can take your experience through different devices as of now. Yeah. Anybody else? All right, cool.
Okay, move on. So this graphic is kind of cool, right? This next one, so bot should be like a human. So like we were talking about before, no one likes to speak to a bot who doesn't. Does anyone remember like the early phases? Cortana was a bit like it in its early phases. It was it felt like you were talking to a bot, and it was like, what's happening? And then they replaced it with a voice, and it was like, sweet. Okay, so it should be like a human. And there's a couple of ways that we think of it should be like a human. The one thing that we'll say is, with a bot, create a character, right? The statement, I'm going to show you a bot in a second, which has a bit of a character to it. And I've got it's got two personalities, and it has a normal hello statement, but then it has like another statement, which is more personality driven. And I can tell you, whenever anybody uses the bot, when they get the second one, they're super into it. When they get the first one, they're like, that's just a normal bot. So that's one thing to me out. The other one is that we talked about guiding is important. So stepping the user through what to do, and you're seeing that very much with all of the bots nowadays. The other one, a really just simple one, is when asked a question twice, humans don't tend to answer the same way. If you think about when you say hello to someone twice, we don't answer hello the same way, right? Usually the second one you're a little bit frustrated, and you're like, why are you asking me again? That's the way the bot should handle it.
Not quite as
Not
strongly,
as,
but
yeah, no, not as angry as that. Not as angry as that. We'll give you, yeah. But here's a trick. So localization that we talked before, secret weapon. One, it's good for separating out things, but if you also use an array inside of localization, it'll randomly choose the statement that it sends back to the user. So you can set up some kind of 5 different text strings, and it'll randomly just choose one of those text strings. The next one, okay, there's that saying that bots make less mistakes than humans or something. That's what Elon Musk is trying to say. But you'll see here that bots can make mistakes. They're not the mistakes that you'll expect at the end of the day. They're the mistakes like I talked about before, which is when I say an employee name that the bot's never seen before. Often it won't pick up the employee name just because it hasn't been trained on it. Another one that I ran into with my network one was, say a person puts in someone's middle name, and I've only trained it on names with 2 words. Guess what it does? It just falls over and says, I can't find the name. So you need to build in that fault tolerance for the user, for the thing. So if it doesn't recognize something, it may not be the user's fault, it may be the bot's fault at the end of the day. It could also be the user's fault. If it is the user's fault, ask them for it again. And then the other one, like maybe a person misspelt something. And then like we said before just there, give the user a second chance in a nice way. Don't yell.
A few other things that I would just add to it. As you were saying, help is really important, right?
Yeah.
Because most of the time, I don't really know what to ask the bot. And if you are not guiding it properly, it can actually leave a very nasty experience with the bot, which you do not want. So guide them, talk about, here's the thing I can do. Maybe pass it to a link where you have a bunch of screenshots and talk to them about, hey, this is the flow, these are the kind of commands I want. Help is really important. Ask them to type help and say things. Feedback is important. Ask them to type feedback and then give some feedbacks if they want more stuff in it. So yeah, the bot's duty is to guide the users, right? The users don't know what they want. And other than that, exactly, the character, give it a character. You don't want to talk to, again, a robot. You want to talk to a person. Go for it. Yeah. So there is, in fact, we used Bing spelling API behind the scenes for Ignite. Then we actually moved it out because it was just actually trying to give us a good word for the odd code names that we have for our session. So we had to we had to move it out. But yeah, you can use bunch of, and we will be talking about this when we talk about building the bot smarter as our tip. But yeah, I'll talk about that then.
Yeah. So you definitely could. And the way you can do that, there's actually like a piece of piping that you can do before the message gets sent through. So that's usually where we say put authentication, put anything you want to do.
Absolutely.
So you'll see things like even like when you're translating. So there's a default translate which you can switch on. But if you want to go deeper and actually do things like a special cognitive services based on that, like a LUIS based on that language. So the backstory of that is if you've learnt another language, English, we do it one way. If you've learnt anything like, I'm trying to think, I'm learning Indonesian at the moment. But even like Chinese, Japanese, the ordering of their sentence is different. So when they type a sentences in, if your LUIS model has been trained to detect a certain order, and then a Chinese person gives a different order, then obviously it's not going to pick up and it's not going to recognize the employee at the end of the day. So you might need a separate model for that audience. And that's that. But yeah, you definitely can. Definitely can. Yeah, question.
Yes, it can.
Yes,
We
it
will
can.
talk about that when we get to the smart one.
It's more not, because at that point it's more reinforced learning when you are training it. It's more on the circumstances where it doesn't know. So when it's a new employee name. So it's like we have something like how many employees, whatever. I haven't written the code to train all of them. So yeah.
It's all about training though. LUIS is all about training.
Yeah.
The way you train it, that's how it gets shaped.
Yeah. It's in the AI space, it's interesting to hear if you talk to people who are deep in it, they're not so much interested in the ones which have been trained, they're interested in the ones which haven't been trained who can learn by themselves. And that's the reality, set that all up. So let's switch across to one of them. Okay, and I am on 6. Now, this is another bot. If I go, another thing actually here that it's not in the tips, but I'll launch this one. And then I'll go ahead and connect to it. Here. I'll do hi. We'll see what message we get. Oh, we got the boring one. Okay, so that's, so it goes hi, and it goes, oh, hey there, my name's Nero. I'm the New South Wales trained bot based off open data. So I'm from New South Wales, so that's why. So we did this for Sydney Transport. But it's saying, how can I help you? And it's based on train schedules. What we did is we took the actual open data that Sydney Transport push out, and we built a bot on that. I can tell you if you want to know the secrets behind that bot, it's basically there's a fancy bot to the front end, and then there's one stored procedure which does all of the lookup of the table. So that's it. Now, the thing there you'll notice is that I've done that. The thing, again, if I type hi again, what should it do? It goes, not sure why you're saying hi again. Hello again, could I help you with a transport type question? So it's trying to guide the user. If I do hi again, will it say in the same one, or will it change for me? It goes, now I'm just confused. Why are you saying hi again? Surely there's a transport question you'd like to ask. So it's built in to kind of keep having that kind of almost sassy, but not too sassy at the same time. And the way it's built to actually doing that is if I go across to the code here, so it's similar to like before. So I've got that. We're going to ignore the password to the SQL database that's sitting right there. We're going to go through, it's okay, it's a test one. We've got the localization settings that we talked about before there. We've got a bunch of code here. Then we've got the intents here. So if we see a bus question, this bot doesn't actually understand the bus timetable. It only does the train timetable. So that's a bit of a short discussion. But you'll see here the quote origin and destination. That's the code that it walks through. If I show you though, here, so you notice here, I go session.send didn't understand the intent, and I pass through these values to it. So it's actually passing parameters through to the statement at the end of the day. That statement is actually stored in this index.json here. You'll notice it looks kind of a bit overwhelming. There's lots of statements it can say. But you'll notice here at the top, so that didn't understand is actually is one of them. It's not that one. It's one of these didn't mention. But you'll see here this greeting already spoken to. So we saw that now I'm just confused before. You'll also notice that there's the not sure why you're saying %s again. So %s is actually to pass through that value like I showed you before. And then what it's doing is basically just randomizing and cycling through them to give that kind of spontaneous experience that we expect from the bot. Now that's that one as well. The next one I want to show you, conveniently this bot isn't working at the moment, but it shows an important part of it. So if I go here, what is the next train to Gordon from Central? They're two suburbs in New South Wales. Shout out to anybody who's from New South Wales here. But you'll notice here it goes, sorry, my back-end system doesn't want to reply. I'll need to come back to you later. That's my way of trying to softly say to the user instead of throwing a 500 error or 400 or a 404 error. You also notice I actually have different messages depending on what the error is. They're ever so subtly different, but so if a user goes to me, oh, I got an error the other day, I can say, what was the statement you got back? And then I can look into what the error was. So that's one way I've encoded it there. But like I was saying there, so make sure you have that spontaneity there, really easy to do. The statements are sent out there, and that's all of that. You also notice the character there. Oh, the one, if you want to see it, is if I look for, there should be a statement which has howdy inside it. If I go across, this is the one, you know, so I said we got the boring one before? Because the second one says, howdy partner, my name's Nero. And then goes off and it says, I'm the New South Wales Train Bot based off some good old open data. So that's the one that gets all of the attention of everyone. That other one is kind of, it's a bit of like, oh, hello. But that one's the more entertaining one. Okay, with that, we're going to switch back and we're going to go on to the next section.
All right, the fun one, I guess.
The fun one. Has everything else not been fun?
No, it was, but with a bit
Is
of
code
cognitive juice.
Oh, true,
There you
true. It's one of the most popular sessions.
That's
this one.
exactly
yeah.
right.
Lockouts.
So, remember till now we did a lot of stuff with bot, and we actually successfully talked to the bot with different things. We pointed the users to different places and areas, and we were not using any of the cognitive APIs yet, right? So that's when cognitive API starts coming in. You can do a lot of things with it. So first one, which kind of goes hand in hand with bot, because bot is a chat where people are just writing stuff in their own ways. A person would be saying hi in 100 different ways, and the bot needs to understand that. And same with the questions that they ask, right? So it's very, very natural that this natural language synthesis API that we have is kind of used very, very popularly with bots. And I'm going to quickly show you how it works, but it's really important that this kind of works hand in hand with your bot. Now, I know that some of you guys have used Lewis and used bots.
Have you
guys
used Lewis?
Any of the cognitive APIs at all? Okay, cool, fantastic.
Okay.
This is the right audience then. So when you actually do use Lewis, a lot of times you would then try to start figuring out and training them with the intents of what the user is saying and what it actually meant. A lot of times what you do is you start, so right now the maximum intents you can do in a Lewis is 40. It just changed like a month back. Before it was just 20, right? So a lot of people came back with the feedback, hey, 20 is not enough. My bot does a lot of things and it answered a lot of questions. 20 is not nearly enough. But most cases we say that yes, it is, because intent is about a type of question that you ask, not exactly the question you ask, right? So think of this. So your bot actually can do 20 different things, different types of things, which is a lot, right? Remember, a bot is not really a Cortana, which is your personal assistant, which you can ask anything and everything, and she would just go and do it. Bot is more about a company's interface or an organizational interface which you talk to and ask questions or do some work with. It's more transactional. It's not really your personal assistant, right? Much like a Cortana, and then that's why you start using Cortana with bots to do more sort of seamless experiences. So, just think about types of things that your bot want to do and the intents, and then figure out your intents. And I'll show you briefly what it means. Q&A maker. So this actually came what, 4 months now, 4 or 5 months now.
Yeah,
We had an
that's
internal
nice.
preview which was going on before that for a few months, and then it finally showed up. And boy, I mean, everybody is using it. It's awesome. Before that, what we used to do is use something called Azure Search, and I'll quickly talk about that later. But with Q&A Maker, you can start having your knowledge bases, your FAQs, and all that stuff bulk loaded, or you can hand build it whichever way you want, and then train it a bit. It does a lot of so all the smart answers and the quips that the Ignite bot does, it actually goes through the Q&A Maker in most cases. Again, so that you can fall back to different ways of doing things. So usually what the flow would be, your bot going to Lewis, and maybe I'll just get to the next slide first. Your bot would go to the Lewis. Lewis would tell you exactly what the person is trying to ask. If it falls through, then you go to Q&A Maker, where it's a generic knowledge base. It will try to map the question with your knowledge base. And it doesn't just do a string matching. It is pretty smart. It knows what kind of things you are trying to ask, and it will try to give you the best shot. And also remember that everything comes with a number or a score. So you can actually play with the score to extend or reduce the fuzziness of the answer. And then you can also use Azure Search to, how many of you actually used Azure Search before? Not many. So it's just a indexing tool that Azure uses. It's basically a forked out version of Elasticsearch, and it can then index bunch of data sources that you have all around your applications, and it's amazing the way it works. So as soon as you put it through Azure Search, it automatically goes and searches through your index data sources and gives you the right answers if there is any. So these are the multiple level of stuff that you can build through it. All right. So let's quickly get through to -7 through some of the demos. Very, very simple ones. So this is everybody's favorite, something called WeatherBot. So we ask questions. We all love to talk about weather. There's nothing else to talk about, and then it gives you some answers, right? So if I really run it through, so again, Lewis Dialog is something which is an inbuilt class, which is there. You can use it, and then how it works, pretty much. Sure, it heavily depends on the attributes that you show up. In this case, you would be directly mapping to the attributes or the intents that you have built in your Lewis. So if I go back to my Lewis here, so this is basically my application, Lewis application. It's Lewis.ai. Just log in with your ID and use a Microsoft ID as well to log in. And this is the kind of the intent that's there, and I've just used this one. So remember, somebody asked me that can this be tackled by Lewis? Lewis can tackle most of the stuff. First name, last name, you can actually match with phrases. For Ignite bot, remember that we had whole heap of speakers, right? And you were just searching, hey, who's speaking? When is this first name, last name speaking, and stuff like that. And they are proper nouns. There is no dictionary to actually go and match it. So you can use phrases like that. You can use actually phrases in Lewis where we can go and, like medicine names, right? Medicine names are weirdest names that is possible. How would Lewis match to those? So you can actually create things like phrase lists where it can go and look out first before it goes somewhere else.
Yep, and that's in the bottom left there.
Yeah.
Phrase list features.
Phrase list features. I'm not using it here. All right, so if I say things like, how is it in Melbourne? And you see that it automatically, it's pretty certain the score is 1, which means that it absolutely knows I'm talking about weather. And so you see that I haven't even mentioned the word weather in my question at all. But so this kind of comes with a bit of training, obviously. But it knows that this kind of things would be asked, and it knows what the intent would be. And the other thing which is interesting is for what particular region I'm talking the weather about, right? So it also automatically selects, picks the sort of entity. Here in this case, it's the location, right? And you can actually put in as many entities as you want. You can then train it so that from your phrase, it automatically knows what the intent is, and also starts identifying and map the entities as well, so that you have the tools to work with when you go to your code. So when I get it in my bot, in my code, I know talking about weather, so I need to hit a weather API. Which place I know from sniffing out the entity, and that's how I do it. So if I really go back here, I just did Gold Coast, and you see that it's kind of tolerant with the spelling as well. That's not usually I spell it, by the way. So if I go and say still running, okay, cool. So if I go and say come on, since we're talking about NSW a lot.
Sorry. People always give me that feedback. Talk about the other states.
Usually the emulator does the trick. We'll see if it works. Actually, it's 3979. Let's quickly check if that's what I'm running at the moment. 3979 should work. Yeah, I'm talking to a free API. Maybe it's doing it anyway. So so this is where obviously the Lewis would be getting the intent. It would be trying to call an API. But what if the Lewis doesn't know about what I'm talking about? That's in our case. In IgniteBot case, it kind of redirects me to something called Q&A Maker, where it does all the FAQ and stuff like that. And I'll quickly show you the portal for that. It's basically a knowledge base, question and answers, much like an FAQ. Most of the time you would probably use Lewis, but this would be practically your end all, where it can start answering different questions. You can again train it, test it. You can do a lot of stuff in here. So if once you've unsuccessfully asked if the weather is nice in Sydney, and you can say 365, I have to check if it's still hitting my, yeah, it does, okay, cool. Yeah, there you go. So in this case, it failed through the intents because it didn't know that I'm talking about weather, but then it passed me through, for some reason after weather, if you ask about Office 365, it would start going to the Q&A Maker, and then Q&A Maker start picking up stuff, and then it would start giving me data from the Q&A Maker. So this is practically how we would be, doing the flow of stuff. And the last but not the least, Azure Search. It's your friend. You absolutely need to use it if you are doing a heavy sort of stuff that we did for IgniteBot as well. I actually have a quick demo. I don't know if it'll run, but let's see. In this case, this is the Azure Search screen, and this is kind of the indexing. That's where it happens, sort of a thing. It's much like what we have done with IgniteBot when you talked about session and goes and brings some. Let's see what this is. 726. Actually, even before Azure Search, I think search is fine. I'll just quickly talk a bit around the cognitive images. I think that's a bit more fun stuff rather than this. Let me open that one. Image caption, hit that. So this one is, I'm just going to quickly show you a demo on how my IIS Explorer is misbehaving. I'm going to show you how it kind of sniffs images and stuff like that. Anyways. Unfortunately, something is going on with my this can't give me enough ports anymore. All right. 3979, I think it's already in use. Just how are we doing with the time?
Oh, are we meant to end in? Oh yeah, okay. That's like run.
Okay, cool. We're pretty close to.
And all of them are like, we have questions. We want to ask.
We're very close to done.
I'm hungry. I want coffee. Maybe that's just me.
So this is cool. Okay, so it started working for some reason. So it's good. Now let's get back to image caption. This is the fun one. So this is, I'm using something called image or vision API behind the scenes to kind of talk about different images that you can get, and you can synthesize those. So can I just please close this somewhere? Okay, I understand. Anyway.
Do we want to switch across some?
Let me quickly see what port this is on. 3979. Okay, so that's fine. I'll just, yeah, it's just it's misbehaving. Anyway, just
I think
try
this is
with
a
Go.
yeah, this is a case of the machines decided to throw a hissy fit.
Yeah, why don't you start with that? Maybe at the end I'll
and
just
then
show this
we
one.
can if we
Yeah.
have time. Okay, we're going to switch. We're getting hurried up now, so we're going to switch. But this is probably the most important part of the whole session. It's to remember all the non-coding parts. This is where we get some fun stories as well. Okay, so plan your bot. Keep it simple to your brand. If you think of a bot, like as trivial as that person standing there with the Microsoft logo, like a bot is almost an ambassador for your brand at the end of the day. It represents who your brand is. The personality of it carries very far. If you think for us, we've got the infamous stories about that one which went on Twitter and then it did some things.
Yeah.
And then we've got other really nice stories about the recent one. Is it Zoe? Is the recent one or something?
Yeah.
There's one which is actually really
Not the nice
playful.
ones, don't worry.
And I remember listening to one of the podcasts and they were like, oh, it actually sounds like I've got a friend on the other side talking to me. And I was like, see, that's a good ambassador. That's one thing to think about. The other one is test it early and think of deployment early. So like we talked about before, yeah, he's laughing. Testing early, one thing. Lewis is awesome, but it's only awesome when it's trained. If you don't do the testing, how is it going to get trained? Kind of common sense.
Yep.
Deployment. Do you want to give the one about the Ignite bot?
Yeah. So training is absolutely important. Train them. Think of them that they are the first. They're this naive person who came the first day in
They're
a
like
help
a
desk,
child at
right?
first.
They don't know anything. So training is absolutely important. More you train them, more you use them, smarter they get. That's number one. Number two is most of these starts free, and they are free. But obviously in testing and dev it's all good. But if you are using a lot of customer base, it would start throttling if you are not in the right tier. So think on those lines. And obviously the infamous one is it's not probably the best thing we did. As soon as and he would be showing you that when we publish the bot, it's basically two-step process. One is the registration, which he did.
Yeah.
And then the publish. The publish means that you actually publish it out to the world. When you register it, because it's Microsoft product, Microsoft automatically switches two channels on, like Skype and Teams. Now if you're in dev and test, you're fine because Skype in dev and test, it would give you 200 users, which is plenty to play with. But as soon as you put it out for an event like Ignite, you would have thousands of users in no time. And if you forget to publish, that's where the channel would start throttling you. And that's what happened in the first day for a few hours. We forgot to publish it and then frantically start sending emails. And Microsoft, it kind of worked out well. Different parts, different people across the world, they switched it on for us. So, but yeah, those
do it early, not on the day of the event.
So think on those lines.
Yeah. That's the other. The third one here is just a last note. Think about change management. We've got a couple of customers now who are really excited about the bot that's been developed. But there are a lot of employees in there which aren't excited because they know that their job might potentially be going away. And that's a reality that we all have to come to. That image of that chair being empty, it's just, think about it. I know for one of their customers, it was, they said it would be 3 to 4 months of change management to get the bot put in. They're currently going through that to put it in. But that's the kind of thing. So even as trivial as we have, a lot of our common ones are call center cases. So they want to take level 1 support and replace it with a call center, replace it with a bot. That's a lot of change. That's a more somber topic. Quickly, we'll end off on this, I think. I just wanted to go across. If you haven't seen the bot directory, that's where you publish your bots to once you're finished with everything. There are quite a few there. If you're doing bot demos or bots to anyone, go ahead and use these. You have things, I've been told Hipmunk's actually quite cool. be like meme bot. You can play solitaire with the bot. I don't know what your face does. I've never seen that one. But you can see all.
Just the Vision API, the one that I was trying to
Oh,
show
is that
you.
what it
Yeah.
does? Oh, okay. So that's your face. And the summarized one is cool as well. So go ahead and look at the bot directory. Once you go into them, say go to the summarized one, it'll prompt you which services it can go out to. So for the summarized one, it can only go to your Skype. And that is Skype Personal. So there is no Skype for business support for bots at the moment. But there is Microsoft Teams support, which is another option.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Skype for Business is something that probably happened sooner than later. But there is work going on, so yeah. Keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and with that, I think we're going to wrap up there. We hope you enjoyed the session and hope you enjoy the rest of the day and the flight back as well, wherever you're going, or the drive back if you're local. Otherwise, please give us your feedback and tell us where the session was wrong, or if you love the session, would prefer to hear that. But anyway, thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Thanks.